unlike Kid Anakin Skywalker,
Yippee!
I'm not a huge fan of building things. While cool and pretty complex in more ways than I thought possible with cardboard, the main focus of Nintendo Labo is on putting these intricate kits together. Of course, upon completion, there are mini games that you can play, but the majority of the time spent with these kits will be building. With that in mind, I kinda just steered away completely from the Toy Con. Until now. This is Danny from the Famicast, and today we're taking a look at the Nintendo Labo VR starter set, and a look at kind of what I think the Labo VR needs for the future. And with the Labo VR starter set, it's pretty easy to put together, for the most part. When I was building it, I was watching a little bit of TV, chatting with my wife, and we also had some people over doing some work on my house. And with all this stuff going on, it took me about an hour to complete the VR headset. I was ready to enter the world of virtual reality after all that was put together. Now, I also got the blaster, but I haven't bothered to put that together yet. I don't know if I have the dexterity to sit around and build something like that for 3 or 4 hours, but we'll see. Maybe in the future I'll come back to it. So the accessible content for the VR goggles are made up of mostly mini-games. These really aren't anything too terribly deep, but at the same time they do exactly what Nintendo want them to do. Provide some kind of bite-sized VR experience. And most of these are kind of a little bit throwaway in nature. However, I did enjoy a few of them, like the VR basketball. In this mini-game, players use a Joy-Con to point at a ball and pick it up, and then shoot by releasing the trigger button. It wasn't super complex, but it's actually kind of fun. It kind of reminded me of the basketball that was on Wii Sports Resort, but it's not as complicated. Other games, such as like a simple platformer that had players climbing up a tower with this little box man, was pretty cool. You can balance a tennis ball on a racket. You can cut hair on this really weird-looking head. And you could also make some music and also just throw instruments all over the room like I do. All these were kind of fun and, pretty interesting experiences. None of this stuff is going to blow your socks off or anything, but there's actually a pretty surprising amount of content here. And when I say content, I mean content that's more geared towards a casual crowd, not necessarily hardcore gamers. So one of the most interesting stuff in this whole VR package had to be these 33 VR videos that you can access in the Discover section. These range from things like looking at animals, checking out food, to a nod at the existence of the Virtual Boy, which was pretty surprising. Now, unlike the minigames, these only require you to just look around, which can be pretty appealing for people that just are seeking out some kind of a passive VR experience on the cheap. Now, on top of these videos, they also have this little section that has all this information laid out in like chat-like sequences that essentially, well, they explain a lot of different things, but one of the things that they explain is how the VR goggles and the 3D tech and all of this stuff works. These chats aren't necessary and probably would be kind of boring for kids or people that don't really care too much about technology, but for me, I thought it was interesting to learn how this VR is made possible with Labo and the Switch. Visuals while playing in VR are a bit on the blurry side. This is to be expected when you have a 720p screen pretty much literally on your face. The resolution is had when playing in VR mode, down to 360p per eye. It reminded me of kind of looking at a 3DS screen, only having it super up close and personal. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I mean, these goggles also give you a sense of 3D depth, which kind of help with the immersion, and I'm a person who really liked the 3D on the 3DS, so I thought this was pretty cool. As for general performance, the minigames all run pretty smoothly and everything looks fine, despite the low resolution. Now, after my first few sessions with VR goggles, I did notice that I was feeling a little bit nauseous. And, as I mentioned a little bit before, that same day I had some people working on my house and they were spraying some chemicals and stuff around, so I don't know, it could have been some kind of a combination of chemicals in the air and then just my first VR experience, I don't know. Still kind of smelly in my house, so I have to wait a little bit longer to see if it's either the smell or it's VR or whatnot. But if this is your first VR experience, be aware that this is something that you might run into. Most of the footage of Labo VR that you'll see on the internet aren't really captures of the VR experience. While playing in VR mode, you are unable to capture video, and there's a pretty good reason for this. So, when you go into VR mode, the screen makes 2 viewable on-screen portals that match up with the goggles. And if you're to capture a video of just what's on the screen, it's just going to be 2 round circles on the screen. Not ideal. Kind of like looking like what this screenshot looks like that I have sitting here right now. You are, however, to go through the experience without the goggles, kind of like an augmented reality or an AR version of all of these games, and videos too. And in this mode, you would pick up the Switch system and move it around, and possibly maybe a Joy-Con too, to play your game. clearly, from just the name alone, I think Nintendo hopes that owners of the Nintendo Labo VR will give the VR portions a try before kind of opting and giving up and just going straight to the AR stuff. As for the future of Labo VR, well, first of all, I really think Nintendo's done a pretty admirable job with their initial virtual reality outing. I mean, it's far from perfect, but it does offer this really inexpensive way to get gamers to experience VR for possibly the first time ever. As you know, at the end of April, some updates are coming to Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild that are going to integrate VR support into each of the games. Well, I can't really comment on how that will play at the moment. It's not out right now. I am curious to see if this is something that gets supported in other existing or upcoming Nintendo titles, like let's say Captain Toad, Splatoon 2, maybe some kind of a spectate mode, some kind of support for Luigi's Mansion 3, hello, Pokemon Snap. I mean, these all would be pretty cool. Not only first-party games, but third-party titles too. I'm realistic with my expectations here too. I don't think we're going to see anything like Doom VFR or Skyrim VR in the system, but I think there's plenty of room for a lot of smaller games and or other projects. I think there is a precedence for this too, so shifting gears a little bit here, back in the early days of 3DS, there were a number of weird things coming out on the system, especially here in Japan. And one of my favorite apps on the system in the early days was something called Itsunoma ni Terebi, commonly referred to as Spot Pass TV. And don't confuse this with Nintendo Video, which is a similar thing. They delivered 3D videos and stuff like that, but this was a Japan-only 3D video service that Nintendo worked on in collaboration with the Japanese broadcaster Fuji TV. And there was new content delivered to your system via Spot Pass almost every single day. These ranged from showing Japanese quote-unquote idols wrestling each other, train rides, park tours, and even dates with Japanese ladies, all in 3D. The service was pretty short-lived. It only ran from June 2011 to June 2012 before being unceremoniously canceled. Now, I know a lot of people out there, maybe VR aficionados mostly, may not want something like this, but I think this is exactly the kind of platform for these kind of experiences. I'm not talking about keeping something region-locked to one region or another. I'm talking about maybe finding some kind of a way to deliver some kind of new and interesting content on a regular basis. I think this is something that's pretty doable and not out of the realm of possibility here. For people on the fringe, or people who have some kind of a slight interest in VR, the price point of the Labo VR starter kit has the potential to get people in, and I'm pretty sure it probably already has at this point. Consistently releasing content, though, that's going to be the key to keep people there, keep people coming back. Now, as a business, Nintendo doesn't really have to do this. They don't have to continue to support this VR platform. They've already made their money on these mountains of cardboard that they've already sold. They don't really have to keep on supporting it. But, kind of looking back at what they did with previous Toy-Con, in particularly looking at the Toy-Con support for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch, I think there's some kind of precedent here for them to continue to support the platform. I sure as hell hope that they do. As I stated earlier, I found these mini-games in Labo VR to be a little bit underwhelming. However, I really love these videos. For Nintendo to keep Labo VR owners busting out that headset on a consistent basis, they need this content. The additions to Odyssey and Breath of the Wild are going to be a great first step, probably. And access to the Labo Garage is another cool thing, too. Now, having other passive content, though, like a VR video hub, will be perfect for people who want to casually experience VR in short bursts. Keeping gamers engaged with Labo VR is a tough feat, and if Nintendo goes on the same trajectory as with previous Nintendo Labo releases, this experience is going to fizzle out pretty quickly. However, the fact that Nintendo is adding support to two of their biggest titles on the Switch is a pretty big deal, and I think it bodes pretty well for the future of this quote-unquote platform. The impetus doesn't just lie in Nintendo. Other developers need to get on board if this thing is going to work for more than a month or two. Thank you for making it this far in the video. These have been my thoughts and kind of my hopes and dreams for the Nintendo Labo VR platform. As always, thank you for checking out this video. If you like what you see, please consider giving us a like and subscribing to the channel. We got tons of podcasts, video reviews, special videos, and a whole lot more. Again, this has been Danny from the Famicast. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.